Major support for these programs is provided by Bank of America Merrill Lynch and Perfect Building Maintenance, New York Community Bank, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, Greenberg Traurig, LLP, M&T Bank, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Chelsea Lighting. Additional support is provided by Briarwood Organization, Bruce Mosler, Capital One Bank, Cassidy Turley, C.B. Richard Ellis, Cushman & Wakefield, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development, DDG Partners, Hal Fettner, Durst Fettner Residential, Friedman LLP, Accountants and Advisors, Flushing Bank, Gemini Real Estate Advisors LLC, Genova Burns, Giantomasi and Webster, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Center at Syracuse University, James Orphanides, Centurion Holdings, Corman Communities, Madison Realty Capital, Margolin, Weiner and Evans, LLP, Certified Public Accountants and Business Advisors, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Meridian Capital Group, Newmark Knight Frank, Sterling and Sterling, SJP Properties, Stonehenge Partners, the Wickoff Group, Urban American, and Ackman Ziff Real Estate, Aerial Property Advisors, Eastern Consolidated, Essex Capital Partners, Goldman Properties, Moynihan Group, Muss Development, RAL Development Services, the Spandrel Group, LLC, Rosewood Realty Group, Terra CRG, Triangle Equities.
So there are these chefs and operators who are running businesses in New York, some people around the world, and they're here, and we're going to try to find out what they think about the market, how the world, how the media is helping them, and, you know, what's happening. My guests, they include the famous Marcus Samuelsson, as a New York Times bestseller, David Pasternack, who's wearing a Stoley Report shirt, you know, from Esca. Okay, Ed Brown, the chef, innovator, and master chef of Restaurant Associates, and of course, the real host of the show, Drew Nieporent. Okay, so Drew, since you brought some of your friends, right. How is the business in the summer of 2000?
First of all, I want to say I didn't bring just some of my friends. I brought the creme-de-la-creme. You know, Pasternack, how many years is it now at Esca?
It'll be 13.
13 years, and he's arguably one of the greatest fish chefs in the country. And this is a man who makes like a killer gravlax. So, okay. You know, you know, this is really funny because Ed Brown actually he's hung his hat a little bit on fish over the years.
Absolutely.
I've known
Wait
Ed
a second,
a little bit.
Actually, this should have been a show about fish. Yeah. We could have talked about lutefisk.
Yes.
We could have talked about Nobu.
Yeah.
No, but Ed, you know, for so many years he has quite a storied career. But you know, he launched the Sea Grill, which is really an incredible place. But you have the cookbook is called
The Modern Seafood Cook,
and that's a really beautiful cookbook.
Ed's Chowder House.
Ed's Chowder House currently, and then you know, Marcus has only a bestseller. We in the kitchen, you know, when the chef says something, you go, "We chef," but his is "Yes chef," which is probably the smart way to interpret it. But this book is off the charts right now. Right?
Yeah, we've been really fortunate with the book. I've been touring all summer, but the great thing with being on book tour is I've been cooking with some of my friends in restaurants across the country, like whether it's in Austin or San Francisco or Oakland. But, you know, American food today is incredible. You know, we're at the worst of time with food. We're also at the best of time with food. And that's really what
Why is it incredible?
Because before, great food was maybe New York and San Francisco and, you know, certain, you know, spots here and there. Today, you can go to almost any mid-sized to big city in the country and have incredible food.
A lot of small cities too.
Yeah.
Oh, and including, and you were a pioneer there probably in Minneapolis, for instance. But the truth is, we all came from the school of French cuisine.
Yeah.
And that was probably.
Would you really say the truth that
Yeah.
they are chefs? We don't know what you.
Well, I could get arrested
Okay,
for impersonating a chef, but,
that's
but
right.
one of these days I'll give you my outtakes from my cooking shows on the Food Network.
Yes.
My hour-and-a-half special, my Thanksgiving special. But the point I'm trying to make is American cuisine really now has come into its own because regionally, you know, when you're in North Carolina or if you're in Portland or you're in Seattle, every city actually has an imprinteur, but the food that's being produced by young chefs now, and it's a generational change.
But wouldn't you
know, it's
say
very
New York
profound.
City still has the best restaurants and the best chefs in the
Well,
in
you
America?
know, we're like the New York Yankees. Of course, we will always be the best. But I just came back from a trip. Marcus and I were together on the West Coast in San Francisco, and there, you know, there's an incredible number of vibrant restaurants. The only thing over there is they seem to have discovered pizza because you can't go to a restaurant without getting pizzas on the menu.
But the other thing I would like to add to that is also I think the ethnic communities are also even more so in the picture today than they were before. We've always knew about Italian food and so on, but you know, Vietnamese food. You know, there are so many other ethnic cuisines that are considered incredible food, which it should be. But that one, when I came to the country,
You bring up the best point in that it's the American chefs who are interpreting.
yeah.
Well, the
the guys-
ingredients become mainstream.
Yeah.
That's the key. You know, I mean, 5 years ago, you know, people didn't know about Thai chilies or, you know,
And we always brought
papalote, all
brought
these
the best
odd, strange
ingredients
things.
to
Exactly.
New York, and now these ingredients are everywhere. And there's certain regions
Very true.
who have their own ingredients that we have to get from them in these far-flung places.
And I think that relates. I mean, the U.S. Open is going to take place in 2 weeks, and you're involved supervising, you know, some of the chefs, the chefs in the work over there. But years ago, when the U.S. Open, restaurants, you know, you didn't have good food. in
Hamburgers,
sports
hot dogs.
arenas. Okay, it was, you know,
That's
we
right.
joked. It was
You were
Harry
lucky
M.
to get a hot
Stevens.
dog.
I mean, you couldn't get anything else.
we
And
built
there-
restaurants,
And today,
it's
What he did years ago was the ultimate pop-up restaurant.
Yeah,
you know, they talk about these pop-ups
Yeah,
now.
I never
But
thought of that.
But you create a whole complex.
Yeah.
And how many meals after 2 weeks, right? That's it, 2 weeks?
14 days,
14 days. How many thousands of people do you serve?
countless thousands.
And then they had a restaurant there called Aces where he brings in, you know, the most beautiful shellfish and I mean, extraordinary food, really good food.
And ethnic also. I love, for example, you have Indian food there, right?
Yep.
I mean, I just love how far we come with this ethnic stuff. Like, wow, you go to US Open, it could be great dogs or burger, but it's also you can have great curry. That's
You know what?
incredible.
You know what American cuisine was 25 years ago? It was a steakhouse. That was about the best we could do.
so would anybody?
Now look at
I have a
American
question. So
cuisine.
is that
Steakhouse with something with hollandaise sauce, you know, is
Well, hollandaise is
very
a French sauce, bro.
driven in many ways.
Very French driven.
do we see more steakhouses opening?
Well, I think they're evolved into something
gourmet
else, right?
steakhouses,
They're
though.
gourmet steakhouses, and there are also a lot of fun places. You know, you look at a place like STK, it is steakhouse driven, but also very much vibe and alcohol driven, right? So it's evolved into something else.
Yeah, but look at Ben Benson's. You know, Ben Benson's was an institution. They closed.
Yeah.
You know, it was the lease. But you know, hey, if you want to pay more rent, you could have stayed in business.
Right.
The Palm is around. You know, there are places, but you know, as you say, those are different. Those are really restaurants. STK is a place where you go. It's a venue. It's a scene. People want to be there.
Well, it's a
okay?
steakhouse that's evolved into
Right.
what we're talking about. You know, it's modern. It's, you know.
But restaurants in general, no longer, I just go there to eat.
Yeah.
I go there for an experience, an evening. You know,
It's entertainment.
you go to Red Rooster and you're not going there just to have dinner. Although you have a great dinner, you have a whole experience. If you come to Chowder House, there's a lot of things going on. Visuals, things happening, people, different looking people.
Nobu.
Yeah.
Where is that? Is that
Wait a
New
second.
York?
Is that
Esca.
Where did that come from?
Bone
No,
here.
Esca, I can understand. You know?
Oh, no, I was going to just say design has become such a
Yes.
huge element.
every part.
But then there are restaurants where when you strip away all the bells and whistles and the facades and you can get right down to the food, that's not a terrible thing either.
It's
You know,
incredible.
You gotta have
and
great
to do it on 9th Avenue, come on.
yeah, no,
Incredible.
exactly. Pioneer.
Well, yeah, Hell's Kitchen, you know, it's the gentrification of Hell's Kitchen is unbelievable.
I mean, look, no one would go to 9th, 10th, and 11th Avenue.
Well, they would go there for different reasons, to play 3-card Monte or, you know, maybe do
For the
some illicit stuff.
transvestites. Okay, well, you know, variety. No.
That's the New York we love.
No, that's-
we know and love.
No, that's no. So how does a young chef? Okay, you know, because now he's over 40, so he's no
Yeah.
longer young.
Yeah.
Okay, how does a young chef get into the business? Not in the business, cooking isn't the question. How does a young chef get to own a restaurant? How can you build, because it's expensive?
Very easily. Find somebody to give you a lot of money.
Now,
How do you make a small fortune in the restaurant business?
Start with a big one.
Start with a big fortune.
But I think it's still, the beauty of our business is, yes, it's brand new in many ways and new platforms, but the core of it is still the same. It's talent driven.
Yeah.
You work really, really hard and you show your talent. You work with some great chefs, and that chef or that owner is going to see you and say, hey, come with me. I want to open a place, a smaller place maybe. You're going to get a shot. So I love the fact that, yes, there's so many different things that have changed in our industry, but our main core values as chefs, as operators, is not changed. Hey, I got a great guy, I got a great girl, she'll work with me for a year. I can still pick up the phone and send them off to another place. So the core of the industry has not changed that much, actually.
Well, coming back from my trip, I realized something. I was like, okay, I went to this restaurant. It's named #1 now in the country, best new restaurant, State Bird Provisions. I thought it's the worst name ever. But it's in San Francisco. Stuart Brios and Nicole Krasinski were my chefs at Rubicon. But they weren't married when they worked at Rubicon. But now they're married, they have had a child, and they opened their first business. Go to Glen Ellen, Sonoma. My sous chef from Cortone, Ari Weisswasser, got married, had a kid, moved out there, has just opened something called the Glen Ellen Star. Unbelievable. Stephen Lewandowski, 11 years the chef at Tribeca Grill, gets married, has a kid. You get the theme here a little bit, right? When you're single,
I thought
you
it sounds like you're the father of it.
No, but listen.
You know,
no, when you're single, you got to work your tail off. But now, when you have a wife and a child, you have to look yourself in the mirror and say, "Am I worthy of owning my own business, controlling my own destiny?" And Stephen just opened in Stamford, Connecticut, Harlan. So this is an example of 3 people with extraordinary talent. And guess what? They did not need Drew Nieporent to guide them. They did it on their own. And
But they had the right training throughout.
Right, but I'm just trying to point out that he asked that question. How do you do it?
Wait a second, but the cost of opening up a restaurant today, to equip a restaurant, to the leasehold improvements, I mean, the banks still don't love restaurants. I mean,
Not coming
restaurants.
from banks.
It's not coming from banks.
Banks from people's
Unless you want a
pockets.
personal
And the bank,
guaranteed
and I
money.
think that's fascinating, right? Restaurant industry, one of the industries you can't outsource this. It locally, look at Tribeca, how much Drew has put into Tribeca because you identify with the restaurant, right? Yet, we're not going to get help from anybody. This is like, we're betting on Red here and we're working really, really hard. We're not getting money from the banks, so we have to figure it out ourselves. Versus the banks, they're getting money from the government. There's nobody coming helping us out.
Nobody's helping us. In fact, when there's tragedy, be it 9/11, be it anything, the first people who come to the aid of everyone is restaurateurs and chefs. Yeah. We're asked to come and cook, donate the food, and every time the answer is always yes. I don't know how many hundreds of events we have done together around the country.
Thousands,
if I added up what the value of that between the time and the actual cost of doing it, products, transportation, etc.,
it's in the millions.
Would be in the millions. But nobody's giving us money.
A banker has to look at the prudent investments. This is a tough business, Each day the register has to work. You can also get hurt because of the crappy ratings. Drew was talking before, the air conditioning, the heat. And I think it was you, David, who brought it up before. If you have a B or C rating, you hide it behind the door. You put it on the floor. If you have an A rating, you have it in the window and the smile over
I talk about it with my staff all the time. Once a week, twice a week, we have meetings. We talk about the health department. We do our own inspections a couple times a week. Nice. And, I bring it up all the time. Guys.
Well, first of all, we all have a track record. And there's no way we don't want to do anything but wholesome food.
Absolutely.
But there are sometimes physical things when it's hot outside. It's 8 o'clock. The refrigerator door is open and close, and then the guy shows up at 8 o'clock. Could he do it at a Yankee game? Could he do it at the Carnegie Hall? What business could somebody from the government walk in your business and suddenly interrupt your art, what you're trying to do? We're a business too, but get it. It's so disrespectful.
Or a second rate.
I find the whole thing utterly preposterous. But
I think becoming, being a professional chef, the profession being a chef in this country only goes back to the 70s. Of course, people cooked and worked before, but somewhere in there, I think it's 77, we became a profession, right?
We were blue collar work.
Yeah. And now, when at least there's this balance between people cooking on TV and people owning their businesses, and we're having other professionals coming and saying, hey, I'm not going to be a lawyer anymore. I'm not going to be an architect anymore. I'm going to open my restaurant. That's the best thing that can happen for us, because when the more people that grows up and say, I want to own my business, I want to be a chef in a tough economy, I think that's great for us, you know. But that means that it's more diverse. There's more different type of restaurants. And I just think that the restaurant industry is still, it's really tough, but it's still thriving, and some great examples.
And listen, you listen to this guy, and today his career is extraordinarily on an upswing, and yet he is a tried and true veteran, because he's had his fair share of
failures.
And we all probably have. I think.
Yes, sir.
I've closed restaurants. I know Ed, and you know, David, you work for some certain people.
But you bring up a good point. So what is the key?
We're the veterans.
Okay,
here.
wait. I don't want to talk about it. I mean, 81 was a great idea. Why does a good restaurant with a good chef, with a great operation close? What's the key to killing a restaurant?
In my case, it was a luxury restaurant in a place that was not used to having a luxury restaurant, but was probably really was ready to have a luxury restaurant in a neighborhood on the Upper West Side where I lived for 25 years. And it was in the pipeline for 2 years. We raised a lot of money. We did an enormous build out. It was happening. But just as we came to the end of that 2 years before we were ready to open, things started to tank in the world. I open, we have great review. It's accepted beautifully. First 6 months, I was like, if it goes like this is going to be everything I could have hoped for and then some. But then the world really tanked, and Lehman went down, and we collapsed.
And the world changed. But you know,
and we tried to change with it. But here's the thing: we did such a good job at telling the world who we are that they believed us. And so once we said we're going to be this luxury restaurant, and we got that word out, everything started to collapse. We took luxury items off the menu. We reduced the prices. We put a grill room. I mean, we changed. I didn't sit there and say, well, they're going to come anyway. I changed immediately. Couldn't save it.
Here's another thing. The good news and the bad news. There used to be 3 or maybe 4 literary things that determined if we were good or not. You know, it was a gauntlet of.
That is 300.
Now it's 300. Great. And guess what the problem is with the 300? Number 1, there's no consensus. Number 2, they give as much print to a pizza and to a hamburger. I call it culinary equivalence, as to, you know, a guy who's worked his entire life to create, you know, his aspiration to do fine cooking. So the public reads this and says, why do we have to go there, and when we can just, you know, it's an experience to go to the hamburger place.
Wait a second, but this is exactly what you're saying. You know, look, the internet has an effect on you. These Yelps, these other items.
It's unbelievable.
Okay, people read these blogs. People read this, and if there's a negative or something,
but
they only remember. It's not the good stuff.
Right. Well, the bad stuff is more fun to talk about, right? But here's the thing: it used to scare the hell out of me, because I used to go on and people can say whatever they want. There's no filter.
See, I don't go online and read any of that
stuff. I don't anymore, but I got to tell you that
I did last night.
Enough people have read them, and enough people have seen enough bad things, so it's not so shocking anymore. And they also know, not every
They realize that many of the people who write these things are just want to see their names.
Or see their names.
If you go to a steakhouse and you order a steak and you order medium rare and it comes out medium, okay? This is the problem with the internet. And the waiter comes over, touches the table and says, sir, how is everything? And they say it's fine. Then they go home and they bash you on the internet. And then the waiter comes back and says, you know, would you like some dessert? And somebody comes by the table and says, how was everything? And they say, oh, everything was great. And then they go home and bash you. People have no chutzpah anymore.
But I think
they do. They just have it privately.
But I think the advantage is now also as chefs is
they hide behind
we can also, because a lot of that happens to me too, right? But I think the other advantage that you have right now is that we can actually create those platforms ourselves. Before we always used to, there was the Times, there was the Sagat's, and maybe New York Magazine, right? And eventually Guide Michelin. But we actually can also create these platforms ourselves. You know, Twitter and Facebook is for everyone, so we can actually counter that.
Wait a second. Twitter, Facebook, and internet, your own websites are the key. And many people, you know, really play with them very well, and they promote them very well on the internet. Hey, look, people from around the world watch my show. I'm on YouTube, I'm on iTunes, and I'm on this. People want this. Now, the Food Network has changed your world. I mean, You're the oldest member over here in the room.
By far.
By far, okay? Okay, but you know what? Look at it. I think Scott Conant said a couple of months ago when you brought him back, because you're the talent chef over here, you know, people you go to the airport, they're going to run after you. These people want, the kids want to become restaurant today. It's no longer I want to be an attorney. It's just exactly what we want. I want to be a restaurant owner. I want to, right?
Well, there's no denying that there's this extraordinary fascination with celebrity in all of its guises, and the few times I'm recognized, they look at me and they're like, "Hey, chef," because they know I'm in the food business.
Yes.
Can't say, "Hey, restaurateur," can't do it. And you know, it's funny. It's literally every week I'll get that. You know, like, you know, "Hey, chef." But the thing is, the Food Network, which is a blessing and a curse. It's exposing cooking and heightening everyone's interest. Yet they've now switched away from real professional chefs back to the amateur chef.
Right.
It's
I have nothing against Paula Dean or Rachel Ray or any of them, but you know, when we watch them cook on TV, we know that we can't do that. That would be impossible for us to do. You know, use a already prepared product.
But you know,
Okay,
the Food Network is probably single largest contributor to the expansion of food culture in this country, because people watch television. And
you know, watch it a lot.
We went from being blue-collar workers to being recognized, and in some cases, celebrity.
You know, I said this to Drew before. There's this channel called Destination America. One day I accidentally got it, and they have all these barbecue. They got the 3 guys who look like Drew. Yeah. Okay, they're all over there, and then they're saying, we put the bacon, and then we, you know, the pulp, you know, and all the rest. You know, it's all,
I mean,
I'll tell you right now, though, the worst thing ever is this eating competition stuff.
I hate it.
Where, like, you know, the
I
Joey
refuse to
Chestnut
go on.
Yeah, but people like
Well, I'm not only talking about the cooking competition.
How much fish could he
I'm talking
eat?
about
That's the
Adam
question.
Richmond.
If only they're eating
trying
fish
to
and
eat
not,
20 pounds
hot
of chicken
dogs.
wings.
Right.
And
No,
the hot dog guy. I
But
mean,
here's the thing.
that's
When I
disgusting.
was at the Sea Grill for all those years,
That doesn't do us any good.
you know, I appear a lot on the Today Show, sort of the neighborhood guy, and Jeff Zucker, who ran the station at that time, I'm at his table one day for lunch, and he says, you know, "Oh, I'm watching that show." I won't say what show. I said, "You know what? That show really pisses me off, because it's not, you know, he's not really doing cooking like I would do it, and it's not correct, and it's not, you know, it's not traditional." And he said, "Ed, get over yourself. The sooner you realize that television is a medium of entertainment, to entertain people, for businesses to sell products, period,
I just learned
then
something
then you got it all.
It's right in front of your face.
And anything other than that, you're delusional."
But TV...
That was the best thing I ever heard.
Okay,
That's a great story.
I think it's a great story, but it also does relate. TV, Sirius Radio, books, articles help your business. They really do. I mean,
Absolutely, but you still have to produce the product at the end of the day. You have to give the people the quality of food, because the competition is so fierce out there. You have to be able to give them good service, hospitality at multiple levels.
And we're
It'd be
also...
fascinating also, okay, I look at food TV also very similar to sports, right? We watch more sport. Doesn't mean that we exercise more, right? It's the same thing with food. We watch more food TV, but it's going to be great when we can also marry that with, as a country, eating better, having better food choices, having better, you know, coming closer with the food castle in this country, for example. You know, affordable farmers market more in communities that can't afford it. So I hope that the food TV culture is the culture and an engine of change in terms of
And
us eating better.
I think that it is, but if we go back to what we were talking about earlier, we've all been to some of these smaller cities,
Yes.
and you're seeing stuff. If you had been there 15 years ago,
Forget about
you
it.
find literally zero
but
who have
we're-
now seen some of these shows, and you got a young chef who decided he's going to make a real restaurant, and there's some real stuff everywhere.
We do one cooking class for free a month in our community in Harlem. And I did one for the local YMCA a couple of months ago. This kid says to me, and I was doing this couscous with chicken and ricotta. He says to me, before I put the ricotta in, he said, 13 years old, he said to me, "Chef, is that ricotta?" And I said, "Wait a minute. How do you know this is ricotta?" It's like, Food Network. And it just dawned on me that this kid, 13 years old, living here, he's exposed to the world in a completely different way. Like when I was 13 years old, I didn't know what ricotta was.
Well, that's why it's hard to come up with an original ingredient anymore. You know, people say, you know, you find anything new, it's very difficult. Yeah. You know, 15 years ago it was easy because there wasn't so much exposure.
I'm tired of finding something new and making something new.
Yeah.
All
I'm tired of it too, but
no, but
people
I
ask
mean,
you all the time.
I don't mean that in a bad way.
No,
I mean that in the sense of, I just want to take the best chicken I can find, or the best bass that you could catch for me, or that I could grow in a garden something and cook it better than most
But
people.
you're doing that. I mean, you're doing that at Chowder House.
But that's what I want.
With your business.
But that's what I want to be doing versus, oh, you never heard of this before. Listen, one of the most successful things going at the moment is your restaurant. What's the biggest #1 seller? You say it.
Fried chicken.
But people want good, simple food at the end
When
of
it's
the
the
day.
best,
That's what
it's
they
the
want.
best, period.
They want
So
to
I have
be
a
able
question.
to recognize what's on
You
their
know,
plate.
So now you have Bobby's Burgers and all the rest. Can we one day see Marcus's fried chicken? Can we have
Can
your
only hope.
fish? No. I mean, do you see that proliferating over there in the smaller fast food concept,
Well,
like what you have at City Field? You know, the same way the
great
Catch
concept.
of the Day. The Catch of the Day, you can have Catch of the Day restaurants. Okay, you can have Marcus fried
the only
chicken.
way-
You can have Ed's
Yeah.
variety of chowder house.
The only way we
Chowder
can do
Shack.
that is if your community, the real estate community, gives us a break. And all this talk about all this talk about the economy and stimulating the economy. All of us have provided jobs for thousands of people because we open businesses. I can't open a business if the day I open, I know that I don't have a fighting chance to make profit. I can't do it.
Yeah.
So I even in Harlem, where he is, he's paying top dollar rent because if he's tied in by some clever realtor to the percentage rent, it doesn't matter what street he's on in New York City. He hits a home run, he's paying top rent.
Yeah, you know, your friend Shelley Fireman said to me, I got no problem in paying percentage rents. He said, you know, if I'm making more money, my guys are making. As long as my rent at the base number is over.
You know what my philosophy about this, Michael, is if I choose an area like Tribeca in the 80s where it's $12 a square foot and I hit a home run, I can pay my cooks more money, I can pay my dishwasher more money, and I can actually open a second restaurant. Yeah. That's my philosophy.
It's very hard.
That's my success
And that's
story.
okay. It's okay if we make some money.
It's very hard
wouldn't
running
that
a
be
business,
right?
Drew, in the beginning, tell me about what did you pay? Was it $12 for the?
That's exactly what I paid. And can I tell you something?
And he found it through the New York Times, too.
And I did. And by the way, I'm in the premise for 27 years. You do the math. I paid over $2.5 million to a guy who bought a building for $150,000. and I got low rent. That's the lowest rent I had.
Wait a second, you got smart
paid
in the second one.
$2.7 million.
At least you bought the building on the second restaurant.
Well,
partners.
we bought the condominium, thank you. And I did buy it on the third restaurant in San Francisco. But like an idiot, I sold it too quickly. Now Tyler Florence is making a fortune over there.
Yeah. $12 square foot. That's a great story. That's great.
No, but look, this is what, you know, sometimes, no, you have to, I think what it really comes out is you have to have the ability to sustain this. You know, it's tough to be in this business.
You just hit the nail on the head. It's a marathon. Yep. And the press is only fixated at the moment. Who's in, who's cool, who's trendy. The fact is that Red Rooster, as hot as it is, he has to sustain that. Because how many years?
13.
Yeah.
So we have
22
to sustain.
at Tribeca?
Yeah.
And how many years you been doing your thing?
Many.
5.
Okay, I wish we had more time because I know with this group I could have done a 3-hour show. But I'd like to thank Marcus Samuelsson. Good luck on the book.
Thank you.
David Pasternack, Ed Brown, and of course Drew. See you next week.
Thank you.